So, hello everyone. Today on the Rediscover podcast, we're honored to introduce a remarkable guest with a diverse and extensive background in mental health and academia. Currently serving as an assistant professor at Trent University, they bring wealth of knowledge and experience to the show.
Their journey through academia includes roles at institutions like Cambridge College, where they've imparted their expertise in mental health nursing. Beyond their academic contributions, they've made a significant impact on the mental health sector, working at organizations such as Family Services of Peel or Trillium Health Services. With a profound dedication to their field and a rich academic history, our guest promises to share invaluable insights and experiences on today's episode. So let's introduce our guest, Dr. Wahid. How are you doing today, Dr. Wahid?
I'm good, thank you, and thanks for having me.
So, without any further ado, let's get started in the first question. So, why do you think youth are particularly at risk to mental health challenges compared to other age groups?
That's a very good question. And when we think about youth and the mental health challenges, we're thinking about specific factors that can impact specifically this group. One of the factors is their brain development. So, with adolescence or youth, this is a period of significant brain development, especially in the prefrontal cortex. When we think about it, this is the uh, part of the brain that governs decision making, emotional regulations. So during this development, it can lead to impulsivity, emotional instability that can make youth specifically vulnerable to mental health issues. So this is from the physical and physiological part. And I can add also to the physiological part the hormonal changes, right? We know that there is hormonal fluctuations during that time or during the developmental time that can impact their behavior and can also contribute to mood swings, emotional vulnerability, which makes them vulnerable to mental health issues. Also, thinking about youth, we need to understand that this is a very important developmental period where they struggle with questions like identity. And when we say identity, is the self-discovery process for each and every individual, where they're asking about their values, they're still wanting to feel belonging, they have some internal conflicts or emotional stress, trying to figure out who they are. So this is the identity formation or the self-discovery is one of the factors that adolescents or youth would be struggling with at one point. From the social point of view, when we also think about adolescent, we're thinking about the peer pressure. So this is also a huge factor in their development because of the need, the urge, the crave to feel that they fit and that they are accepted among their peers. So this peer pressure can also result in some risky behaviors like anxiety, stress, sometimes depression. Um, so elements like peer pressure or factors like peer pressure at that development stage is huge, which makes them very vulnerable as well to mental health challenges. Um, Educational wise, if we think about it, this is also a time where academic performance is kind of pressure. There's high academic expectations and pressure to on the individual, which can create significant stress and anxiety among youth. It's the time where they need to figure out what they like to do and where their future going to be. So starting from, let's say, high school or even before that, they want to know which subjects that they like most, how they can academically perform their best. So these academic performance expectations can also create significant stress for youth. I would like to add also the social media. Social media has definitely positive sides, but also there is cyberbullying that happens during that time where I'm not really aware of who I am and I can be very influenced by negative comments. So any social comparison or online harassment can definitely end negatively also impact the self-esteem and mental health of youth. Um, Last thing, if we think about it, is the family dynamics. So if there's any family conflicts, if there's neglect, if there's over control from a specific parenting style, that can also contribute to a lot of emotional distress for the youth. So if you think about it physiologically, mentally, emotionally, development stage, um, expectation, socially, everything around this age group makes them vulnerable to mental health challenges. And I think that's why when we put our focus on how vulnerable they are and what are the factors that makes them vulnerable, what are the mental health challenges that they can face, I think that this is a very important and significant discussion to go through.
So, moving forward into the same topic that we were just talking about, which types of parenting styles are out there?
Well, let me answer this question by explaining each parenting style and maybe the impact on the mental health of the youth. Maybe that will be helpful to see how each parenting style can impact the mental health. So, starting with the first one, there's the authoritative parenting, which is authoritative parenting, parents who are warm, responsive, they're very nurturing. They also set clear and reasonable expectations and boundaries for their children. And boundaries, when they are clear and there's a routine, we usually say in psychology that also it provides safety for the children. For when they are growing up, they know what to expect. So in a way, it's kind of safe. So this kind of parenting style would encourage independency while providing some guidance and support to their children. How this would impact the mental health of the children? Well, we see this parenting style is associated with positive outcomes for the children because it leads to higher self-esteem. The child is independent. They have a better way to regulate their emotions. They are also okay with social competences. So children usually who are raised by the authoritative parents tend to have a strong sense of autonomy, but also there is expectation that they respect rules and boundaries. So you can see that sense of balance in that specific parenting style and how that impact positively the mental health of the children or the youth when they grow up. But we also have the authoritarian parenting, which is there's a very strict, demanding parents. They're often very cold in their emotional interactions with their children. You see, also there is their emphasis is on obedience and discipline. So they want to see their children obeying the rules, and usually their rules are very inflexible. Their expectation also is not flexible. So how does impact the child? Well, that can lead to mixed outcomes for the children. So while the children are kind of raised in such households, they tend to have good self-control and discipline because they are always under rules and under strict expectations. They also experience a very high level of anxiety and most of the time lower self-esteem. Also, we see that there's difficulties with the decision making because everything needs to be strict, need to be very clear, need to be strict rules, and that makes them hesitant with the decision making moving forward in their lives. We have also the permissive parenting style, which is very lenient style of parenting. They tend to avoid confrontation in the family. They set very few rules, maybe no boundaries for their children. Sometimes we see that they prioritize the children's desires and wants over discipline, mistaking that with this is love, this is how we are very responsive to our children's needs. But in a way, if we look at the impact on their mental health, we can see also that this specific parenting style can lead to mixed outcomes. because the children in that household, they might have high self-esteem, high independency maybe, but they can struggle with impulse control. They can struggle with authority issues. They can have difficulties understanding and um, reacting to boundaries. So this is one of the parenting styles. The other one is the neglectful or uninvolved parenting. So these are or those are the parents where they would avoid little emotional support or attention. They don't provide a lot of support or attention for their children. There is no supervision sometimes. And when we say emotional neglect, it can also be emotional or physical neglect. They're absent in the lives of their children, and definitely that has very negative or serious impact on the children. So we see these children experiencing emotional problems, low self-esteem, lack of guidance. There is also increased risk of engaging in very risky behaviors. And this is because of the lack of the emotional support or attention or supervision from their parents.
Yeah, that was really well answered, Dr. Wahid. So, moving on, could you offer a professional perspective on how factors such as self criticism can influence mental health of?
Yeah, in order to answer this question, what does self criticism mean? Well, self criticism is me criticizing myself. So we think about negative self talk, that inner dialogue that you have in your head going on 24/7, where there is serious negative self talk. It's going on all the time. Usually, it's a kind of trying to take the voice of the parents, like how the parents talk to us when we were children. We are kind of adopting the same and having these kind of self talks. And the negative self talks is more of self doubt, lower self esteem. It can be also a sense of inadequacy in general. When we think about the impact of self criticism, well, there's definitely increased stress and anxiety. And the self-criticism, it triggers the body stress response, because I'm always having that level of high level of cortisol. So my stress level is always high because I'm listening to this negative self-talk all the time. And negative self-talk can be, number one, I'm putting myself down. I'm always shaming myself. I'm having very high guilt feelings. And all this will lead to general anxiety disorders that we see in the youth. We also see panic disorders, all because of the negative self talk. So self criticism is increasing stress and anxiety for sure, but also it has some impact on the behavior. So we see that people are putting unrealistic high standards for themselves. So when we talk about perfectionism, for example, those are the people that they have very high anxiety, sometimes panic attacks, low self-esteem. Again, it goes for because of the increased self-criticism, that negative self-talk that's causing a lot of frustrations and anxiety and feeling of failures because I'm not meeting these high standards for myself. Would that impact also relationships? Well, definitely, excessive self criticism can also impact the interpersonal relationships, which we will see leading to insecurity or avoidance. I'm avoiding relationships. I have difficulty trusting other people. I don't contribute to social events, so it will lead to social isolation in a way. And all this is also the impact of self criticism, because I'm not confident enough to build relationships and to have trust in other people and let people see my vulnerability in a way. So I'm very defensive. So if we think about self criticism, we're thinking also about the negative impact on relationships. Would self-criticism also be associated with depression? Yes, 100%. We see a lot of depression that's associated with a strong self-criticism. Because if you think about it again, self-criticism is mostly the self-blame and the self-judgment, right? So if I am negatively talking to myself, having this inner dialogue all the time, it can lead to depressive symptoms and feelings of hopelessness or feelings of worthlessness. It's all related to depression somehow. The also impact of self-criticism can reduce my coping strategies, and lacking this effective coping strategies to deal with any challenges because of that feeling inside the individual, the feeling sense of helplessness or sense of hopelessness or worthiness. So how would I be able to cope against any kind of stress or challenge? We see also a lot of behavioral avoidance with self criticism. And this is again, if I don't have that confidence in myself, I will be definitely avoiding a lot of situations that will trigger me feeling self doubt or feel because of fear of failure. I will be avoiding any social interactions which can limit my personal growth and would lead to a lot of isolation. Again, isolation can lead to depression. So you can see how all of this is connected to each other. Last thing, which is the extreme of it, is sometimes self-harm or suicidal ideation, which that's in very extreme cases. The persistence of self-criticism can lead to self-destructive behaviors.
Okay, so thank you so much for answering that question. Moving on, how does practicing gratitude within a family environment improve a teenager's overall mental health and well-being, just going
Very good
into their
question.
day-to-day life?
Yeah. This is a very good question because if we're talking about gratitude, uh, gratitude is a positive energy in general. So if we have gratitude within the family environment, how would that impact a teen's mental health? Well, number one, it's the emotional well-being. The gratitude practices foster that positive emotions and reducing any symptoms of depression and anxiety for any teenager. It also encouraged them for a more adaptive coping strategies. We talked about the ineffective coping strategies due to self-criticism. So if we're thinking about resilience, if we're thinking about encouraging them to have more adaptive coping strategies and teaching them how to navigate challenges with greater resilience, that's an impact of gratitude within the family. Also relationships, like expressing gratitude within the family, that will foster strong family bonds, and as a result it would also increase the social connections. Again, we just mentioned with the self-criticism that there is a lot of social isolation or avoidance behavior. If you are having gratitude environment within the family, that will help you to express yourself in a way that it's open for social connection. So it will definitely improve relationships. It will enhance emotional support. It will avoid the feelings of loneliness, because again, family bonds are really important. Start with the family, then I can take these skills and go to any outside relationships and be confident in that relationship. The overall also the positive outlook. What gratitude also promotes is that optimistic perspective that help the teenagers to see any difficulty or any challenge as opportunity for growth, because in the family there's that positive energy of encouraging them, of accepting them as who they are without any criticism, without any judgment. um, so I think that this would be a huge improvement to the overall teenagers' mental health, including the emotional well-being, increasing resilience, increasing their social relationships and social support, and overall their self-esteem.
Yeah, that was really well answered as well. So, also another question. So, in your view, what aspect of mental health and well-being tends to be underestimated or overlooked in this age group?
Yeah, I see. I have a lot of youth in my private practice, and I see that there's a lot of focus on academic achievement during that crucial stage, which I totally understand. It's very important part in their lives where they have to decide where to go. But what I see that we're failing sometimes is how we build their social and emotional development. So youth at that time, they're in a critical stage of social and emotional development. They need to have the ability to form healthy relationships, to cope with the stress, to cope with challenges, and to be able to have the ability to make informed decisions. That's where I see it as one of the overlooked aspects when it comes to the mental health. Other thing is their mental health resilience, emotional intelligence, foster resilience, their ability to bounce back and to be able to face any challenges. I see also that this is one of the areas that we need to work on in terms of the overall mental health of youth. Um, Something else could be conflict resolution. There's a lot of conflicts, whether this is an inner conflict for them to identify who they are at this stage of their lives, or even conflicts in relationships in general. So how are we teaching them conflict resolutions? It goes hand in hand with the emotional intelligence, with empathy, with effective communication skills. So this is also one area that maybe is overlooked. Stress management. We teach them everything at school. We teach them science, biology, math. What about the stress management? How can they, during some periods of academic pressure or when they're having peer relationship pressure, how are they managing their emotional well-being? What are the tools that we're giving them to manage stress and emotional and any challenges to emotional well-being? Um, Maybe something else is how are we preventing mental health issues from happening from the first place? Like how are we mitigating the mental health issues like anxiety, depression, self-esteem problems? How do we talk to them about who they are? How can they build their own self? How can we be there for them during this self-discovery journey? Each one is different, each individual is facing it in a different way, so it needs to be tailored to each one, it needs to be personalized somehow. Last thing that I can think about is the communication skills, and how to have an effective communication is a fundamental aspect of emotional intelligence. So it reduces misunderstanding, it improves relationships, it improves self-esteem. So also communication skills is something that one of the factors that we need to work on in order to improve the overall mental health of youth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reed, with all the insights that you provided. And thank you for being here for this podcast. Yeah.
Very welcome, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. And as we wrap up on another engaging episode of Rediscover's podcast with the brilliant Dr. Wahid, I hope you're having a newfound perspective on the powerful interplay between gratitude, mental health, and parenting styles. Dr. Wahid's insights have shed light on the importance of cultivating gratitude in our lives and how it can positively impact our mental health and parenting styles. So, we're committed to bringing you thought provoking episodes and expert insights in the future. And if you enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Your support keeps us going, and we'd love to hear from you on our social media or through our website. So stay tuned for more fascinating discussions. And until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay inspired. Thank you.
Lastly, we'd like to thank Dr. Rasha Wahid for coming on the podcast and giving us very valuable information on the community and how youth can deal with self-esteem issues.